Hafade, good morning, everyone. The Second General Assembly of the Mariana Islands Legislature Association is hereby called to order. We will begin with the roll call.
Senator Manglutnian. Senator Donald Manglutnian.
Present.
Senator Babalta.
Presente.
Representative Probst.
Present.
Representative Aldan. Representative Umul. Senator McGuffner.
Presente.
Senator Manglutnian.
Here.
Senator Paul Manglutnian. Representative Sablan.
Present.
Representative Camacho.
Present.
Representative Omar.
Gaga.
Representative Castro.
Estiga.
Representative Flores.
Present. Present.
Representative Angelo Camacho.
Present.
Speaker Terlahi.
Gagisu.
Vice Speaker Munya Barnes.
Manana Sichus, Gagya.
Senator San Augustine.
Gagizo.
Senator Kanata.
Gaga.
Senator Siniclis.
Estiguitu.
Senator Barnett.
Gaga.
Senator Titlegreen.
Gagya.
Senator Lujan.
Gagizo.
Sizus Masi. Again, Hafade, and welcome to everyone, especially our distinguished members of the Mariana Islands Legislature Association, our esteemed delegates from the CNMI, especially our colleagues in the Senate and the House of Representatives of the CNMI, the mayor, we're honored to have with us as well, the mayor of Rhoda, Mayor Holcook, and Mayor of Tinian, Mayor Aldan. Sizus Masi for being with us, as well as all of the other delegates, the presenters who have come, and those who have helped us to organize this. And I'd also like to acknowledge my colleagues who are here with us, and my colleagues who are here with us, the senators. Sizus Masi for being here, and of course we have with us some guests of mayors of Guam. I've also invited them since we have mayors from the CNMI. Thank you for coming, mayors. We've got Mayor Chargaloff from Inalahan, Mayor Salas from San Maina. We've got Mayor Sasuiko from Agat. Sizus Masi. And of course our presenters from Guam as well. Welcome and thank you for taking the time to enlighten us during this discussion today and tomorrow. I want to very much thank the heads of the delegation, which is Vice President Manglotnia and Representative Floor Leader Probst, and of course Representative Sablan for helping us to organize and make sure that we are on track with these discussions. I also want to thank the CNMI for their very generous contributions and hosting, co-hosting of this event with us. So, sizus ma'asi. It's with great pleasure and a deep sense of responsibility that I welcome you today to the Second General Assembly of the Mariana Islands Legislature. This assembly stands as a testament to our collective commitment to the progress and well-being of our beloved Mariana Islands. Our presence here today reflects our shared dedication to addressing the diverse and evolving needs of our communities. And in the face of challenges, we continue to demonstrate resilience, innovation, and an unwavering spirit of cooperation. This assembly is not just a platform for dialogue, but a beacon of our unity and our shared vision for a brighter future. As we deliberate on the various matters at hand, let us remember that our decisions and actions will shape the lives of our constituents. And it's our duty to ensure that their voices are heard, their needs are met, their dreams are given the opportunity to flourish. The trust they place in us is a profound honor, and it is incumbent upon us to uphold it with integrity, compassion, and foresight. I'd like to, again, let you know this is kind of unprecedented territory. This is only the second Mariana Islands Legislature Assembly, so there are no real set rules in place. And we've got some counsel here to help us, and we have a clerk, hopefully, to keep a record of what we are doing. We will have presenters. We have a program that's been printed a couple days ago, so it might be updated as we go along. So I just ask for your flexibility as we go along. And if there's any questions, please do not hesitate to let me know or my staff know that are here out there in the forum. Again, to all of my fellow colleagues, Sidus Maasi, for your commitment to public service and for your collaboration in this vital legislative process. And together we can achieve great things for the Mariana Islands. And let's begin this assembly with a spirit of unity and purpose and confident in our collective ability to bring about positive change. May our discussions be fruitful, our decisions wise, and our actions reflective of the aspirations of the people we serve. Ndakluna Sidus Maasi. Welcome.
Thank you, Speaker Talahi, and good morning to everyone present here today. I would just like to recognize the presence of some of the delegation that joined the Commonwealth Legislature. We have the Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation with us here today. We have the Mariana's Visitors Authority, the Saipan Chamber of Commerce, the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation, and we also have our media here with us today. Thank you for making the journey over to share with the MILA the progress that's going on in CNMI, as well as what are some of the challenges that we can all tackle together. And so with that, good morning, honorable members of the Guam Legislature, distinguished guests and esteemed colleagues, and to everyone here today, Hafidez and Tiro. On behalf of the 23rd CNMI Legislature, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for hosting the second annual Mariana Islands Legislature Association. It is a privilege to be here and to join forces in addressing the issues that impact our beloved Marianas. Your gracious hospitality and dedication to this assembly demonstrate the spirit of cooperation and unity that binds our islands together. The discussions we embark on today are crucial not just for our individual territories, but for the collective future of the Marianas. We are excited to partner with you to ensure this partnership does not wait another decade, whether it's environmental sustainability, economic development, or cultural preservation. Our collaboration promises innovative solutions that will benefit all our communities. So with this continuous engagement and proactive collaboration, it is essential to making lasting progress, and we look forward to frequent assemblies on ongoing dialogue to achieve our shared goals. So together, we can create a brighter, more prosperous future for our Marianas. So thank you once again for your warm welcome and for hosting this significant event, and we hope to see you in the CNMI when we host our next assembly. And so at this time, once again, thank you on behalf of the 23rd Commonwealth Legislature from the House of the Senate. And at this time, I recognize the floor leader on behalf of the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Vice President, and thank you, Speaker Talay, and thank you everyone for joining us. Buenos dias, lesor mamay, magandang umaga po. Good morning to our esteemed leaders here with us, those present also with us in the chamber, our presenters and everyone here, and of course those viewing online. On behalf of the 23rd Commonwealth House of Representatives, Speaker Ed Villagomez, Vice Speaker Joel Camacho, and our SNILE Chairman and our Delegation Chairman, John Paul Sablon, and the rest of my colleagues and our staff, we want to thank you for hosting us in this second General Assembly of the Mariana Islands Legislature Association. We are most grateful to the leaders of Guam, Governor Lulian Guerrero, Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio, Speaker Therese Talahi, Vice Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, the many mayors, and the 37th Guam Legislature. Thank you so much again for your wonderful hospitality. The first Mila was held, of course, as we discussed, about 11 years ago, back in 2013. And before we left, some of our constituents had asked us, why is it taking us so long? Why 11 years? And I told them that we have to wait 11 years to save up enough money to pay for the $600 round-trip ticket it costs to fly between Saipan and Guam. They did not laugh because they know how expensive it is. But it is certainly one of the many regional issues that we will be discussing today, and something we hope we can accomplish together to lower those costs so that we can fly freely and not freely, sorry United, but in an inexpensive manner. But on a serious note, we are here today to discuss very important regional issues affecting all of us in this Marianas. But what we don't accomplish in this second Mila, we can definitely accomplish in the third and fourth and future Mila conferences to come. It benefits us all when we are able to achieve affordable transportation between our islands. And I must profess to everyone listening that as excited as we are to hold this conference, we've had to withstand a lot of criticism. Some have, and of course criticism to everyone here in public service knows that it comes with the territory. But we do hope to remind our critics is that in this conference, this travel, it was only made possible through an OIA grant, and that if we did not use it, we would lose it. We felt that this was the right investment to make in meeting with the leaders of Guam and with ourselves. With the Marianas being labeled as a tip of the spear when it comes to the defense of the United States and our territories, with growing regional threats and tension coming from China, we must have these regular meetings. We now have a divert airfield in Tinian, which puts every one of us in the Marianas at risk if a war, God forbid, were to ever break out. We pray that never happens, but must always be prepared. My dear colleagues, we have the ideas and the determination and the ability to succeed so long as we work together, hand in hand, ensuring that we look after each other. Our congressional delegates in Washington, D.C., representing the Sinamay and Guam, need our strong support on geopolitical issues. And it is important that we stay unified with one voice, with one heart, un Marianas. Biba un Marianas, biba Mila, undang kulo na si Diyos Masi, Giliso. Salamat po.
Situs Masi, Vice President Mangalotnia, and Floor Leader Props, Representative Props. And I'd also like to recognize Mayor Chargaloff from Malesu. Situs Masi for coming, Mayor. All right, and so we will begin. And first on our agenda is transportation topic number 1. And the theme of our assembly today is Itasi, Itanos, and Itautau, un Marianas. And so these topics have been selected by a joint collaboration. And I'd like to invite now the speakers from the CNMI, Mr. Alex Sablan and Joe Guerrero for Open Skies.
Good morning. Hafade Tiruwami in Sinamay. To the honorable senators from Guam, our senators and congressmen from the Sinamay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. I know we have 5 minutes, but I would be remiss to not stipulate that to the point made by both sides, that coming together and having these conversations is important for the Marianas. It's from an outside-in perspective, looking out from the private sector, we're thankful that our legislators are able to come together and have these conversations. 11 years ago, successfully, the first Maila provided for the opportunity to move cattle between the islands as a success story towards this effort. And so for the detractors out there, I think it's important that we all come together and have conversations like this. We may not have all the answers today, but I think putting the first step forward to having these efforts to talk about systemic issues that affect all of us in the Marianas is a good thing. And so with that, you can put the slide up for the... So I'm going to provide a disclaimer here. I am not an airline expert, so I want to play that out. right from the start. I also want to stipulate that this is not an old subject. This is a new subject. This is an old subject. We've been talking about this amongst the legislature, amongst the chambers for 30 plus years, and the open skies concept is not new. Next slide, please. But it is an opportunity. We're thankful that the collaboration, this is a nonpartisan issue, I think, within the Marianas. Obviously, it's not because we have our delegates, Congressman Moylan and Congressman Kilili coming together and collaborating on HR 8786 to address cabotage for the Marianas. But we wanted to provide another opportunity in the hopes that in looking at some omnibus consolidated resolution from this body, that you would be encouraged to look at the idea of having our governors of the CNMI and Guam address this, possibly through the 902 that our governor will be heading to possibly this year or in coming years, but also with the governor of Guam, who we did meet with earlier this year. And thankful to the CNMI legislature for asking us to come together to collaborate and have this conversation. But I wanted to provide this kind of foundation of open skies. Chicago Convention, 1944. There are open skies agreements today within the United States and other countries. The key provision of this is that, and the reason why we're asking the legislature to put a resolution forward is to ask our administration to have the conversation with the White House, because open skies does not require advice and consent of the Congress. It is purely within the idea of executive agreements that open skies is allowed within the provisions of the DOT and the State Department coming together and negotiating these agreements. As an example, and next slide, there are examples with this in case studies, but really the one we can point to is the EU and US have open skies concepts today. They run carriers between countries. They pick up citizens from each country and bring them within the various countries within the EU and the United States. As an example, out of Seattle, you can take Iceland Air, and they've got great connections into Europe, as one example that I know of. But we wanted to play out that the key features is that the State Department and DOT have the ability to negotiate these agreements. The devil's in the details. And so how we possibly get a negotiation for, let's just say, Korea, which is a foreign country that has carriers running between both territories, a possibility that maybe a Jeju could run from Guam, from Seoul to Guam, into Saipan, and possibly running between Inter-Island into Rota and Tinian. I mean, there's just wide open examples of how we could possibly negotiate this process and get an agreement. But I think at the end of the day, there needs to be the effort to push the envelope with this subject matter and pressure the conversation within the White House, amongst the administrations. And again, I think this is a nonpartisan issue. This is something that will help all of our people. To the point made by the floor leader, it's quite expensive to move inter-island. Next slide. So another concept that we've been putting out, and again, this is towards the effort of cabotage, is open skies is a big issue. It's going to be a big deliberative process. But one thing that might be also achievable through a regulatory process is putting and allowing a provision that allows Guam and CNMI residents to board a foreign carrier from the territories, respective territories, and be able to transit through foreign ports. Now, we've been told, and I've had this conversation with several individuals, this is a congressional research paper, so at the end of the day, there's a process where if you break your transit in a foreign country than you could possibly board onward. But there have been times where people have been caught, have been restricted, lose the ticket, lose the opportunity to move onward to the United States. And so it's not a advisable scenario. At the end of the day, we could lower fares, provide more route options, bridge our people between the islands, and improve the access to island medical services that are needed because people need to go off island, just providing more options to our people. So if we could get a provision that does not ding the individual or the airline by having them transit through a foreign port and onward carriage on a foreign carrier into the United States, again, only for Sinamay and Guam residents, we believe there's an opportunity within DOT and state to put in regulatory processes that would allow for this. And it would, upon booking, come up as a notation to the airline that they will not have an impact towards us citizens within the CNMI and Guam. I also would be remiss if I didn't just put out there that we are wanting to continue the conversation about essential air services because Rota, Tinian, Saipan, Guam, moving people within the inter-island carriage, in the commuter aspect, needs some sort of relief as well. It calculated to come here, if I was going to go from Saipan to Luta to Guam, it was going to cost me $730 to get here because of the transit point, and they don't consider this a round-trip leg, right? So you got to buy the ticket from Saipan to Luta, transit there, wait for the plane that comes from Guam to come in and transit onward, backward to Guam. That's a separate fee structure. So it's $330 from Saipan to Luta and $400 from Luta to Guam. And so this is an impact of, again, the size of the communities, obviously economies of scale, but at the end of the day, we think that this is an opportunity to also address essential air service, and hopeful that we could also put that within the resolution. I'm not sure if Joe wanted to add anything. That is my presentation. I wanted to try to keep it sweet, and if there's any questions, we're open to the discussion. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we do allow time for questions. If there's any questions, anyone have any questions? All right. Vice Speaker Munya-Barnes.
Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Sablan. You did bring up a subject, and I was hoping that the notes that were on the screen, that we probably could get a copy of that.
Sure.
And maybe, yeah, if we can just USB it to us so that we can make copies, hard copies. Because one thing that you brought up that is very interesting to me is cabotage. And I know that when Senator Babalta and I were talking in Taiwan, there's something different that you have, Saipan, CNMI has on Guam. You guys have a cabotage waiver? Is that so? And the reason why I'm asking that is because Senator Lahan, for many, many years, has also been trying to work on a cabotage waiver, and I just want to know if there's any differences or anything that we can work on together that might bring us. I know that our governance are different as its jurisdiction of our Organic Act versus your Commonwealth, and how can we integrate that together? I know it's not an easy question, but you guys got some regulatory advantages, and I'm hoping that we can work somewhere in there.
Thank you for that question, Senator Barnes. No, we do not have cabotage exemption. What we do have is Jones Act exemption. And so that is on the maritime side of the equation. And that is something we would also love to have the conversation on. Didn't have enough time to fit this in, but I think as we go on, hopefully through this process in the next MILA, maybe that could be something that could be addressed for
I
Guam.
apologize. That was Jones.
Yeah,
I meant Jones
no
Act,
worries.
sorry.
Yeah. So yes, under the covenant agreement, we have Jones Act exemptions. But again, it's not all that it's pent up to be because of the economies of scale that we have. I mean, at one point when we had apparel, it was possibly an advantage, but at this stage, because of our economy of scale, because we do not have deep ports, because we don't have gantries like Guam, having it as a transshipment point, or utilizing it from that advantage has not entirely played out for us. We do have American President lines that runs through Asia and comes into the CNMI, but so as they also do for Guam as well. And so at this stage, it's not played out as we'd like, but it's something that I think Guam should continue to press for.
Something that we probably can work together on.
Sure.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Sablana, Mr. Guerrero.
Yeah.
Jesus Masi. And I'll call, sorry, Senator San Nicolas? Yes, sure.
Hey, good morning, Hoffa. Trying to recognize some of you. Used to fly back and forth to Saipan when I was a child, and a lot of you guys probably were teasing me when I was a kid. Said, hey, Debo. So I don't recognize any of you, so it's okay. Just want to make you smile a little bit. Sa kailan you guys are too serious like Saipan. Anyways, I wanted to see if we could think out of the box. Like, how serious are we about this lowering airfare on Guam and all of Micronesia? I think, there's a model that I'm trying to, I want to say it, but they're going to say, you're going to tease me again, because I always fall back to Singapore. Singapore uses portion of their GDP, and they invest in companies, like, and what they do is, like, they would buy, like, Starbucks Korea, and I was thinking, we've talked to Congress, we've talked to the president, we talked to literally everybody in government, but we haven't made any effort to buy their shares. If we buy their shares and we have some type of interest in it, and let's say we take one, Airline A, right? That one that always flies around here. And if we collaboratively work together and purchase our shares, like a trust, and then we put our people in there as board of directors or whatever, and we have voting shares. We could put in our people in there in that company, because it is a publicly held traded company, and we can somehow lower prices that way. And of course, it doesn't come without risk, but that's something that we might want to think about, like forming a trust amongst each other, putting some money in there and allocating it for purchase of shares in that company A, and maybe we get enough shares that we can vote on certain issues within that company. And that's kind of like thinking out of the box, and I just wanted to mention that. If that's ever quite possibly one of the things we can use to address, because I think it's very unfair. I think it's unfair that when they look at us, they think that they can milk us for every dime. But in the same token, I do understand that board of directors, CEOs, they want to do well by their shareholders. And I think throwing that out there and seeing if that's a possible, remedy to our problem. Thank you.
This is Masi, Senators. Senators, please bear with me, colleagues. I'm going to ask if we'll complete all the speakers on this one topic, and then we'll open it up again for a few questions, all right? So that way we can manage our time better. So Situs Masi again, Mr. Sablan, and Mr. Guerrero. If I could invite Antonio B. Cabrera, Vice Chairman of the Board of the Commonwealth Ports Authority.
Good morning, Madam Speaker Talahi and Vice President Manglonia, and all members of the Guam legislatures and from the CNMI. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present what we have at the Commonwealth Ports Authority in the Commonwealth. I really like the theme on the brochure here, Itasi, Itanu, Janitauto. And that's exactly what CPA is all about. CPA stands for Commonwealth Ports Authority. And I like to also say that CPA was created sometime in the early part of the Commonwealth as Mariana Islands Airport Authority. But then later on, there was a need to change it under Public Law 2-48 to include seaports. And that's why it's called Ports Authority. So, unlike here in Guam, that you have the Airport Authority and the Seaport Authority in a different department. CPA is controlled by 7 board members, and they're all appointed by the governor, and has to go through the Senate Committee on the for appointment and confirmation, and that's where that's how we get to serve on the board. Then the board will hire the executive director to manage and operate the airport and seaport operations. Now, our mission is actually to develop air and sea navigation to and from the CNMI to its fullest. What Mr. Alex and Mr. Guerrero stated earlier, that they wish to have these open skies, it seems to us that it's a closed sky, because we only have United Airlines flying in from the West Coast to Guam and then to CNMI. And we also have daily flights from Saipan and Guam. No other airlines can do that. If there is Alaskan Air, maybe they can come in and do the same thing, but that will not be very economical. From the Asian side, we do have Jeju, T-Ways, and other airlines, but Asiana just left us about maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago. And we're hoping for them to come back again after the board of directors have offered them a better airport rates. Unfortunately, they wanted to leave because of the increased rates of the rentals at the airport. After saying that they wanted to pull out because they cannot make, of course, profits, and they would like to go to another destinations where they have better offers by other nations. We work together to lower the rates. So with that, we're hoping, crossing our fingers, that they will stay and other airlines will come back. However, we still have, CPA and the CNMI still have some challenges, especially after the effects of the pandemic-19. Financial constraints, we have to go into practicing cost-cutting measures, and we are experiencing personnel shortage. Airlines and flight reductions, low number of tourist arrivals, and then we were hit again with another problem, the immigration issues with non-U.S. contracts, especially after the touchback correct me if I'm wrong, that caused everything to go up, especially with our projects, the development or expanding the airports and the seaports. We lack contract workers, and we lack construction workers on the island. With that, however, we still continue to, with some fundings left behind that we have, we're still increasing the, we add more projects at the airport. So that is to expand the runways and some other improvement and maintenance of the facilities that we have. When I came here yesterday morning, I noticed that what I see at the Guam International Airport is almost the same as the especially Saipan International Airport. Maybe about years ago when I come here, I see all the passenger bridges fill up with aircrafts. Now I can only see a few. And lucky they have about 3, maybe more, but Saipan sometimes only 1 aircraft or 2 of those Airbus type aircraft. Our airports at Saipan International could accommodate a 747 and 777 type of aircrafts. We have all we have met all the requirements as issued by the Federal Aviation Administration, but we're glad that they provide us some fundings, but the cost of operations and maintenance is what we are facing with, big problem with that. Rota, we are still repairing the damages done by Typhoon U2, and the terminal was really in bad shape. Lucky we have some money, and we're repairing everything, and Senator Manglonia here can vouch with that improvement. About a week ago, we were very fortunate to hear that there's a 9.9 million from the federal side to expand, to replace the apron in Rota. Now, in Tinian, we have the runway of about 8,600 feet long and 150 feet, and then the military is coming in, but I won't go into that. I hope the mayor will probably add more on that one. But we do have the facilities there ready and to accommodate anything that any aircraft that would like to come. The terminal at the runway in Tinian can accommodate also 747 and 777 type of aircraft. Now we go down to the seaport. We have Port of Saipan, Port of Tinian, Port of Rota. Port of Tinian is now undergoing, a lot of improvement. It's a very busy town now. And I would not discuss more in detail about the Port of Tinian. Maybe the mayor of Tinian would like to bring that up too. Now, in Rota, we do have also a dock there that we hope any investors will come and provide transportation to and fro with Guam, Saipan, Tinian. The seaport, however, is unlike the airport where there's this air restriction with aircraft, with foreign registered aircraft. In the seaport, we're exempted from Jones Act. So any foreign flagship can come and run between the islands, inclusive Guam. So with that, We hope that the funds that will be made available under Merit, Guam and CNMI can probably work on it too to expand our port facilities. Senator Selena here is very much aware of that, and she can give us more information. And thank you for inviting us. And if you know any investors, aircraft operators or ships, ocean vessel operators to come, we're ready to receive them and provide the facilities that they will need. Thank you again.
Si Jus Masi, Vice Chairman Cabrera, si Jus Masi. And I'd like to invite from the AB Wampat International Airport on Guam, the Deputy Executive Manager, Artemio Hernandez, Ricky Hernandez, and Mr. Frank Santos. Oh, sorry, here's, I didn't see you, Director. The Executive Manager and former Senator John Kanata, Executive Manager of the AB Wampat International Airport. Sorry.
Want to speak first? Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. And I just wanted to thank our Executive Manager here for having the trust and faith in me to be able to speak to this very honorable body. I do want to thank Speaker Terlahi on behalf of Executive Manager as well as our board for the AB Wampat International Airport Authority, which I'll just be referring to as GIAA, to represent the entire organization in this body and in this discussion. I think that discussing airport issues is really important, not only for the economy, but also for the region. And I'm hoping that I don't spend too much time because I know that there's not much, and there's a lot of other important things to go through. But I know when I spoke to Speaker Terlahi a few days ago, and it's good to know that this, because I was not aware of the first assembly. I thought I missed it last year. It's good to know that it happened 13 years ago, or 11 years ago, and it wasn't just me. But I do thank everyone from the CNMI delegation for utilizing Guam Airport and spending those paying for those airport charges and helping us out a little bit because we are a little behind the curve in terms of our recovery. I do want to note that, and just take the opportunity to be able to discuss just airports' importance, and I think just really briefly on our economies, generally in economies where airports are located, but also how important it is to economies in the Pacific and in islands that are very far away from larger bodies. I also wanted to just mention, really briefly, discuss Guam airport issues. As we all know, and I always say this and put it into context, the Guam airport has suffered quite substantially from the COVID-19 pandemic and also into this current post-COVID kind of new normal, and we've lost upwards of over 150 million in revenues since COVID. It's probably more like 170 now, considering recovery hasn't occurred as quickly as we'd like to. We've been able to address those concerns. As you're aware, our bread and butter is passengers. That's how we are able to generate revenue at the airport, and so we've been able to allay those revenue losses with cost containment, with debt restructuring that this Guam Legislature was authorized us to be able to do to restructure and to refund for savings. And we were able to utilize all of the COVID-related pandemic funding. That has all dried up, but we continue to work with our airline partners, with all of our ground service partners and everyone to be able to continue to operate, to be able to pull in passengers and so forth. But as we all know, the weakening yen is impacting all of us, especially Japanese travel to Guam, and we continue to work alongside and very closely with the Guam Visitors Bureau to try to address that. And you've seen that with the new Haneda route, which all of us, including the airport, GVB, and the executive branch, and as well as the Transportation Committee with Senator Jesse here as our vice chair, has been very supportive of and committed to. So with the limited time, I just wanted to bring up 3 topics, and I know that our friends from the CNMI had brought up cabotage relief. We have a little bit of color to that, but we do want to just discuss about the underlying assumption of cabotage relief, which means that we would be able to have foreign carriers be able to fly into Guam and then fly between two different ports. And the underlying assumption is that that would increase potentially competition. That's if the economics work with foreign carriers. And then that increased competition would lower airfare. And that's the underlying assumption of requesting that type of cabotage relief. And I'll when I get through a couple of the other items that I wanted to discuss, I'll turn it over and tag team with Mr. Frank Santos here, who's our airport consultant. In terms of increasing passenger experience, I know I spoke to Speaker about this, and we've been talking about this a lot, especially with the governor and the administration, is the discussion about pre-clearance. It's a Department of Homeland Security program that operates in 15 different airports, airports in Ireland, UAE, Canada, and so forth. And what basically that allows us to do is increase the passenger experience because they would pre-clear immigration and TSA in their foreign port, such as Narita or Haneda or Incheon. And then when they come to Guam, they're treated as potentially a domestic passenger, and they would just go straight to Guam Customs. There's not a lot of time. I just wanted to introduce the concept that we've been kind of already discussing over the last several years, but that's pre-clearance at foreign ports into Guam or even into the CNMI. That helps with passenger processing, passenger experience improvement. In terms of increasing passenger traffic, I know that cabotage relief was discussed. There has been discussion, and I know that Guam Visitors Bureau and Adelup has also been discussing this, adding Philippines to the Guam CNMI visa waiver. There's a lot of opportunities there. Us as the airport have had discussions with airlines, with airports in the Philippines to be able to see if that is something that we can continue to work on. I won't get into the details because there's not a lot of time in terms of what has been done, but I know that there has been progress and discussions on including that as part of the Guam CNMI visa waiver. That'll open up an entirely new catchment area for leisure travel from the Philippines with a growing middle class. Lastly, I know that what I wanted to mention with what the airport has been doing, our board of directors has obviously been very supportive of a lot of the recommendations we've provided, one of which was the Federal Aviation Administration's update to the Air Carrier Incentive Program. So we have updated our Air Service Development Program, which is a program that is the only thing we can do as an airport, which is provide discounts for new service, new entrants, or increase service from existing destinations. And so we provide up to a 50% discount on operational fees. And there's a lot of details to it, not a lot of time to talk about it, but we've updated that and we've utilized that, and United Airlines has used that on the Haneda route. They've applied for that program, and we've been able to support that route, which is a daily route, and we to show our success or our support for the success of that route. Additionally, we partner with Guam Visitors Bureau because they're the ones that could provide dollar incentives to airlines. That is something that we are restricted as an airport by the FAA to be able to do. So GVB is the one we partner with to be able to provide a package of incentives to entice airlines to Guam. And so with that, I know there's a lot. I think one last thing before I kind of hand it over to Frank to discuss a little bit of the history, because he has a lot of history, obviously, more than me. But we wanted to just kind of mention that at the Micronesia, this assembly happens, it comes after the Micronesia Island Forum. And at that forum, we did discuss and we were supportive of the cabotage relief. And we also discussed a host of other things. But I think the most important thing was really trying to have one unified voice and having the kind of the executive branch, and in this body, the legislative branch, having one voice when we do approach Congress to discuss these policies is very important. And I know that that's hopefully that's one of the goals that we can have together as we pursue a lot of these policies. But with that, I'll just go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Frank Santos to kind of discuss a bit of cabotage and a bit of maybe a little bit more of the pre-clearance, but relative to cargo, not just passengers. Thank you.
Good morning, leadership of One Marianas. Everything that's been brought up before, like open skies, essential air service, cabotage, air service development, are all keys to having a sustainable air service and cost-effective air service for our island community. But I just want to tell you a story of over a decade ago, we decided that cabotage, which is not even in the dictionary, it's a protectionist term, and said, how can we get foreign carriers who are nearby to fly to Guam and then continue on to a U.S. point? You know how remote we are. Even the U.S. carriers cannot all come out here and service us. So we looked at what are the mechanisms, what is the process of getting a more liberal air service agreement. And there were two ways. One was through the legislative process, and that's our two delegates have introduced legislation to that effect. That is more sustainable. And then you have the air service exemptions that are provided by the U.S. Department of Transportation. So when we initially submitted our petition, the consultants prepared the initial package, and we requested for both passengers and cargo. We then turn over to a Washington attorney. The attorney then files that petition as a docket to the U.S. DOT. The U.S. DOT then, I didn't have emails in those times, email blasts to all interested parties, especially airlines. And of course, the U.S. airlines, whether they fly here or not, they have a strong lobby that counters anything that would protect for the cabotage issue to be reduced. The evolution of that, though, that the airport amended its petition and removed passengers. So we just stayed with air cargo, and air cargo was passed. That decision was made by U.S. DOT, so we did have an opportunity for foreign airlines to fly all cargo aircraft through Guam to another U.S. point. But in terms of developing that industry for us, we learned that you need to be prepared in terms of infrastructure. So one of the infrastructure was our runway length. So we extended our primary runway from 10,000 feet to 12,000 feet in order to accommodate flights that could fly anywhere in the U.S., particularly to cities that have rail or trucking distribution. The regular ports of entry, LA and all that, they're all backed up. So that was one way to get that going. Now we've done the runway, we extended the runway. We're in the process of adding air cargo aprons that service that. So, and bringing hydrant fuel so that all cargo aircraft like UPS and FedEx that are flying weekly now can utilize that. That's when we had planned to go back to the US DOT for just cargo. But right now with this body, and I'm talking about the combined legislatures, the Micronesian leaders, and all that we need to have one strong voice to Congress, not to US DOT, to Congress, so that we can get a legislation that provides a more sustainable exemption from cabotage. And the reason is that even if we did get it from US DOT, it'd probably be limited to 2 years. Then you have to reapply every time. So you have an airline, whether it be passengers or cargo or both, that want to fly in here, there's a lot of investment they need to make. 2 years is just not enough. So I congratulate this body for bringing this subject matter up. There's a lot more to discuss, and I believe even the 37th Guam Legislature has a resolution that's being vetted right now, and we support that. Thank you.
Just in the interest of time, both of my folks have address a lot of the issues.
Sijus Masi again, Executive Manager and former Senator John Kinata for being here and for allowing these presentations from the Deputy Executive Manager and the consultant, Mr. Santos. Sijus Masi todos. All right. On that, we're set for a break at 10:30, but I think I will allow if there's any short questions for any of the transportation speakers, senators. All right. Senator Lujan, or Senator, let me begin with Representative Castro.
Thank you, Speaker. I just wanted to make a comment on Senator Dwayne San Nicolas' statement about thinking outside of the box. A lot of our Manomko in the past, they did the same thing, creating a tourism industry. And once upon a time, our region owned its own airline under United Micronesia Development Association, and it was called Air Micronesia. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that time period. But when it comes to air service, but in line with the cargo and shipping, getting commodities reduced, there's a lot to be gained from looking into the Jones Act exemption or Jones Act waiver that the CNMI has. But again, it comes down to economies of scale. So you're not too far off. Let's continue to push that because UMDA proved that as a region, when we have one voice and we have a strategic vision in mind, we can achieve and compete at a global scale. Thank you.
Just want to see Representative Castro. And Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, back in 2006, the legislature wrote to, of course, Ms. Dorothy Beard, the Director of Documentary Services, U.S. Department of Transportation, on February 2006, where the Guam legislature wrote to Ms. Beard referencing the state of Alaska's petition. That petition number is OST 96-1600, which explicitly acknowledged Guam's special needs for air services and its regulatory power to assist in the economic well-being of our island. The petition highlighted, of course, the economic benefits of such exemption for the A.B. Wampat Guam International Airport, particularly in the enhancing of Guam's ability, in the island's ability to compete in the trans-Pacific travel and cargo markets. In 2009, the Department of Transportation recognized that Guam's locality in isolation places the island in an economic disadvantage and granted Guam cargo exemption and air cargo regulations that had the potential to reduce the cost of air freight goods to and from Guam. The air cargo exemption allowed foreign carriers to move cargo from a foreign city to U.S. point of entry, then to another. However, the Department of Transportation did not grant, of course, Guam's passenger exemption. As Mr. Frank Santos had mentioned, this goes back almost a decade. And it came through the resolution and in the 27th, I think, 27th or 28th Guam legislature, which I authored, and the official letter was petitioned by Governor Camacho at the time, Felix Camacho at the time, to DOT. The longer, or the fix, the ultimate fix will be definitely going to Congress to petition that. However, as was mentioned, the lobbying efforts from big businesses, whether or not they fly here or not, will come out and fight it. We have a resolution currently to use the same arguments that Puerto Rico is used to be granted not only cargo, but passenger exemptions. We're using the same argument for a 24-month exemption. And I understand completely, again, because this will again be going to DOT rather than Congress. Congress is a little harder. The full-out exemption will be a lot harder. It's a big, enormous fight. and we don't have voices, basically, or votes, not necessarily voices, don't have votes that can sustain the fight that we will have. So we're looking at this resolution, again, to go to DOT using the same argument as Puerto Rico had used, to be granted both cargo and passenger exemption for 24 months for Guam and the CNMI, and hopefully with this body that will come up with that resolution. We can always ask again for an extension. With that being said, and you know, in the very beginning when we got the cargo exemption, we got half a loaf. We're trying to get that other half granted to us. But using our past experience in them fighting us, and unfortunate at that time, our delegate also was not in favor of our granting, of our petition being granted, unfortunately. It was very unfortunate. And I'm glad now that we're speaking with one voice, and both congressional offices have agreed and co-signed on to support a resolution for such. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator. I know there are others who want to ask some questions, but I think we're out of time, and I'm going to invite this Vice President Magnolia.
Thank you, Speaker. Just briefly, I know Director Hernandez brought this up in regards to the pre-clearance, and I hope this is something that maybe you can, along with Mr. Tilera from CPA, can work together on trying to make the process easier for pre-clearance, even out of the CNMI into Guam. I know that's one of the biggest challenges that we have on ROTA is just having a CBP officer on island just to clear passengers going to Guam, but the process is different for boaters wanting to come to Guam, which is much more easier. And so if we can address that issue, then we may see more frequent flights between the islands. And I know maybe this is something that could be worked on with CBP at the back end where we get the clearance upon arrival or something to that effect. But I hope that that's something that Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Tudela, along with the boards, can see how we can make that process easier for our traveling passengers. Thank you.
Senator Burnett, did you have a quick question? Or?
Not really a question. Banana Sidulis, very humbled and grateful to be part of this historic occasion, the joining of all our legislatures. But more of a comment, Madam Speaker. I know that Mr. Santos had talked about this is not a new conversation. We've been discussing cabotage and all these relative issues for many, many years. But I think one thing that is definitely different is the ramping up of the military buildup and all this discussion about the tip of the spear. And I'm just of the belief, because I know it was mentioned by the previous speakers about engaging our governors of our islands. I think that there might be a way through DOD, maybe lobbying DOT, for us to really use the military buildup as a way to leverage some big wins for our region. And so I'm not sure if that effort's already underway with the governors, but I think that's one door that maybe we should look at knocking on, because yes, we all want to speak with one voice, but if we're speaking with one voice and talking to the wall, that's not really going to change things. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Did you have a quick question?
Just a real fast comment, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the comments as it relates to the cabotage exemption. I did introduce a resolution in the Guam Legislature, and that hearing's going to be on, I think, the week July 18th. And with DOT, the comments that came up from the airport, DOT working closely with the governors, I think that I have a resolution that's already prepared, and I can hope that we can get everybody's support on it. I think this is key. This is not a new subject, and I think we need to proactively work on it together. Sainamasi.
All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back at 10:45, please. Yes.
test. Mic test. Good morning, everyone. We'll begin momentarily, so if you can have your seats, and we'll move on to the next presentation. All right, welcome back. Up next, we have under the second topic under discussion, which is labor. We have from the CNMI, the Secretary of the Department of Labor, Ms. Leila Staffler.
Buenas and hafade, Tiro, and good morning to everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity to present about labor topics in the Marianas, particularly for the CNMI. I will say that many of the topics that I will discuss today were part of the discussions that happened at the Micronesian Islands Forum, which I know not everyone was able to attend, so I'm really glad that you're able to have a chance to also put your questions out in relation to these very, very important topics for the workforce. First slide. And I'm a little nervous trying to let that out. So next slide. Thank you. So just to begin, the status and challenges of workforce development in the CNMI are very similar to the kinds of challenges that we also have heard about that happen here in Guam. In particular, economic diversification is something that we are all working on, as we know that a reliance on a limited number of industries and the vulnerability to external shocks, pandemic, and natural disasters, which we have all experienced, is really high on that list, and those kinds of things do challenge workforce development. The skills gap in workforce training is also very, very apparent in that we know there is a significant skills gap between the current workforce capabilities and the emerging industries, particularly in construction, healthcare, renewable energy, as it continues to grow more and more in our communities, and technology. Migration, AKA the brain drain, is something else we all experience. I know that even our CNMI people are being recruited to come to Guam for work, and the competition between our islands can be a strain on our workforce, considering that Guam does have higher wages and a different cost of living, in addition to maybe better healthcare options, and those are things that people often choose to migrate for and leave our islands. And so our brain drain is a concern for our workforce development. And all of that is also impacted by our federal regulations that bar us from certain participations. In the CNMI, we do not have access to the Wagner-Pizer Act, whereas Guam does. The Medicaid block grant formulas are something that we all struggle with. And our reduced populations also, because of the migration, also affect funding for critical programs, such as the Workforce Investment Agency, WIOA, or Workforce Investment and Opportunities Act. Those funding numbers get reduced when our populations go down. And for this fiscal year, I know that the CNMI's allocations went down because of our populations. And considering that we know that the next census won't be for a few years, but knowing that our populations have continued to decrease, that will affect funding levels in the future. And finally, our aging workforce there's two other things. Our aging workforce is another area that we have concern, also because of the skills gap that is present with our aging workforce and our current workforce. And finally, the phase out of the CNMI Transition Only Worker Program, the CW program. That is another challenge because after 2029, there is no other plan other than perhaps everyone transitioning to the H programs, the HB visa programs. And we all know that that is something that is affecting Guam in particular and will affect the CNMI when we eventually do have to transition because of the rigidity of the HB programs to require that construction companies only can have projects for that, or can only bring in H workers for those specific projects. What exemption that Guam received to have projects done outside the fence, as they call it, is something that would be very critical if we go into that transition for the CNMI as well, because the way that our current structures are, we would need to have that flexibility in order to meet the demands of the construction and the community needs. Next slide. Oh, I'd like to just also reiterate that the CW program is what funds apprenticeships in the CNMI currently. And so that is also a concern, because after 2029, what funding source will we have to actually continue the work of apprenticeship, which is something Guam has had a lot of success with and that we would like to emulate. And I'll talk more about that later. So I showed this slide to give you an idea of our JVAs for the last 5 years compared to the a number of CW workers that were approved by the USCIS. Now, note that there are 2 different government agencies that are part of the CW program. The first step is that businesses would apply to the U.S. Department of Labor Office of Foreign Labor Certification. Then, after they would, a business will fill out that kind of paperwork, they have to advertise the job in the CNMI to see if a U.S. worker would be interested and qualified. And barring that no U.S. citizen worker or eligible worker in the CNMI could take that job, then a business can apply for a CW permit from USCIS. The amount of permits that go to the Office of Foreign Labor Certification do not always translate into a CW permit. Now, if you look at this, you can see that CW permits that were approved by USCIS make up that amount of the JVAs that were posted for that entire year. So you can see there's been a fluctuation of approved permits in the CNMI for the CW program. In particular, after the pandemic, you can see there was a huge drop. Right now, we do not have finalized data from the Office of Foreign Labor Certification or USCIS or GAO for the 2023 year. As soon as we get that, we will be able to share it. What I can say is when you compare the Office of Foreign Labor Certification numbers, the permits increased for 2023. I do not have the final numbers that were finalized by the GAO yet, but I know that there has been an uptick in applications. Next slide. So this tells us the trends of the types of jobs that are available in the Marianas. As you can see, the red line is what represents construction and extraction. There was a dip in construction in 2017 when U.S. Public Law 11553, which increased the vocational fees, also did a prohibition of the use of the CW program for construction occupations. And that's why it went down in 2019. However, in 2020, there was an exemption, there was another public law, 116-94, that actually provided up to 3,000 CW visas for foreign construction workers involved in disaster recovery. However, that was only, I believe, a 3-year window, and that has now ended. But you can see that the JVAs for construction have continued to grow despite not being able to use a CW today. This is because of all of the buildup that is happening on Tinian in particular. There's so much construction there, but also all of the CDBG and FEMA construction work that has been happening to replace the homes that were lost after the last typhoon. So there is a lot of construction work that continues to be done and needs to be done. But the CW program is not really the venue for the workforce that they need. At this time, CNMI does not have any businesses that have H-2 visas themselves. The Guam businesses have been bringing their H-2 visa people over, and maybe this year we'll see different numbers also. But since 2023, we have not been able to report any H-2 visas on the CNMI. To note that the top 5 categories in our JVAs represent more than 60% of all jobs in the CNMI. And if you notice, you can see that job seekers with skills in installation, maintenance, repair, food service, and personal care are more likely to find opportunities. There might be high competition for jobs in specialized fields, but the job market definitely appears to cater more towards the trades and service industry roles rather than knowledge economy jobs. Next slide. Oops. So the CNMI, unfortunately, does not have very up-to-date unemployment data because after 2018, when the NMI Workforce Act law was implemented in America, we had to change our funding source of our previous labor force survey that did collect that data to the prevailing wage survey. And since then, we have not been able to collect unemployment data on a regular basis like we had. However, that did change, and our CNMI Department of Commerce did get a TAP grant from the Office of Insular Affairs to continue the labor force survey, which is important because, especially since the pandemic, we know that with the migration aspects and also, businesses having less economy than they were, we anticipate that our unemployment rate would be higher. But at least what we do know is from 2020, our unemployment rate was at 14%. And we do look forward to seeing what the labor force survey will tell us this year. I know that they are currently doing the survey. Next slide. So how have we been trying to address these issues? Through the Department of Labor, we've been working really hard to increase industry involvement in programs through enforcement of our workforce preference rules and the promotion of government-level incentivized programs such as apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, training through WIOA, and more. We would like to expand this further, and we're working towards business engagements to ensure that there are internship possibilities. And so we have a good start. We've also bolstered our programs, and we really thank the legislature for supporting introducing the legislation to centralize the apprenticeship program under the Department of Labor. That bill is currently on your House calendar, and I really look forward to your next session and vote, because then that will give us more standing to apply for further apprenticeship grants. Right now, the CNMI apprenticeship program, I will give you more data afterwards, is still growing. We started out in the pandemic in 2019, and because of the pandemic, we were not able to really get our feet, off the ground. But last year, we saw a huge improvement. But what we really want to note is that we're doing all this work to get apprenticeships, but the one industry that we need the most has not yet come to the table: construction. And my perception after meeting with a lot of construction leaders is that they're so busy. They're the ones that are actually out in the field driving the vehicles because we can't find enough certified drivers to do the driving that needs to be done with heavy equipment. And so we're trying to partner with the Guam Trades Academy in particular to emulate the boot camps that they have and bring more skilled opportunities for people to get certified and trained so that they can take advantage of these jobs that are on Tinian. I've heard that they're being recruited. If you're certified, you could earn $17 an hour today. But because most of our people do not have that certification, they are not able to apply and be hired. And so we want to make it so that they can get that here and not have to leave. And so that's part of our strategy. I'd like to also mention that we had a job fair just last month. We had over 700 people attend our job fair. A lot of them were youth, young people that just graduated high school, and people looking for opportunities. Last year in June, we also had a job fair where we had 700 people looking for jobs. So we have a lot of people looking for jobs, but unfortunately, our skills gap is what keeps them from actually being hired and taking into these companies. They need people with skills. So that is our biggest challenge. But I do have a strategy, and I'm going to work towards it. So just wait. I'm going to give you a different update on construction next, like in a couple months. Give me some time. Next slide. So apprenticeship by the numbers, as I said, we started in 2019. We had a state expansion grant, and then the pandemic hit. So we had one business sponsor and 4 apprentices from 2019 till 2022. But then with the change in the economic environment and the pandemic slowing down, we were able to bump this up to 10 business sponsors and 30 apprentices within this last year. Please give us a round of applause. We deserve that was hard work. We have different fields from hospitality to healthcare to management, and emergency medical technicians. But again, the only industry that we have not yet broken the barrier for is the construction industry. But luckily, I was sitting on the plane next to Mr. Johnson from Black Construction, and Hawaiian Rock Construction, and we're gonna have a conversation. And so he's interested, and we're gonna get more apprentices to come in the construction industries. Next slide. So emerging industries, I know this is similar to Guam, with so much stuff happening in the intangible world of the internet and technology. We know that there's going to be a lot of workforce development needs in information technology, in cybersecurity, in health, in renewable energy, entrepreneurship, agriculture, as you will hear more presentations later about food security, and of course, quality assurance and inspections in the construction industry. So we are aware and we are collaborating with Guam Trades Academy and GCC and many other parts of the Guam training industry so that we can collaborate and emulate a lot of the things that are working here. Next slide. And finally, right, yes, this is my last slide. These are some, back one there. These are some potential policy changes and that could impact workforce development that we'd love for you to consider. Continued promotion and development of skills, continued promotion and development of skills development programs through WIA and other partnerships. We want to continue this kind of process. Revamping the TLC process in particular would be something that I think would be great for our 902 talks in the CNMI in particular. The TLC process is part of the CW application process. And the flaw that I see is that when you are going to try and apply for a CW worker, first step, you go and apply to the U.S. Foreign Labor Certification Office for a TLC, temporary labor certification for that job, where they make sure that the prevailing wage is what you are going to be using. After you do that, the next step is to apply on our JVA website to see if any interested or qualified U.S. workers are there. Then if nobody is, then you would go and apply for a CW application. In my view, I feel that process is out of line. You should be recruiting before you try and get a TLC. Because if you were always planning to get a TLC, then you were always planning to get a foreign worker in the first place. So I believe that disadvantages U.S. workers because they don't have that first crack at it. And so I think that it should be in a different order. For establishing a contractor's licensing requirement, that is how Guam apprenticeships are funded currently. In the CNMI, there is no contractor licensing law at all, which means there's also no protections for consumers if you have a nefarious contractor or something that they do take your money and run away. So having a contractor's licensing would protect consumers from nefarious contractors, but also provide a funding source for apprenticeships after 2029. I know that that kind of a structure would create more expenses, perhaps, and it could raise the cost of construction, and I know that's a worry. But when you look at the big picture, we also want to try and raise these performance expectations of the construction industry and the prestige of the job. Partly why the CNMI has a hard time recruiting U.S. and local workers to join the construction industry is because of our foreign labor experience of the past. The perception is that those jobs are not prestigious jobs. Young people don't want to be driving in the back of a truck, with 12 other guys, because that's the way it looked in the 90s. That is not the way it is today, but we need to change that perception. We need to rebrand construction, because construction work is good work. Construction work is very valuable work. It's so important to building our communities. And so if we can get more local people to be interested in that work and know that they would be paid their worth, because that's part of it too. If you're certified, you're worth more. So making requirements to certify people in the construction industry will bring more local workforce into that industry and make the CNMI economy a stronger base because we have our skilled workers. So that would be my big ask for a legislature to look into. I drafted one, you can use it. And lastly, continued partnerships with our educational institutions. In the CNMI, we are blessed to have a great relationship with our trade school and the community college, and we collaborate amongst each other in very big ways, and we have a lot of focus on the construction industry, so we're hoping that we'll be able to tackle that within these next 4 years, because 2029 is just around the corner. So with that, I will end and allow for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Saffler. We'll entertain questions at the end after all presenters come forward and if we have time. And so at this time, I would like to call upon Mr. Alex Sablan and Mr. Joe Guerrero.
Half a day. Half a day. All right. Thank you, everyone, for allowing us to present today some concepts. Wahusi Joe Guerrero, President in the Saipan Chamber of Commerce. I appreciate the CNMI Legislature asking us to dialogue with them and share our ideas, so they've invited us to present to you today. So the first slide, please. So this is a concept that we've been talking about within the chamber, and we wanted to share with everyone here, is the concept of a Mariana's visa. But before I begin, I am one of the biggest advocates of hire local first. So it's kind of ironic here that I'm promoting a visa for our territory. But I'm also a firm believer that in any growing economy, especially the Guam economy, which is shooting through the roof with the military activity, and we hope our CNMI economy will follow shortly thereafter. We need ample supply of labor, and this is evident in the United States with the doubling of the H-2 visa quota. They've had unprecedented economic activity, and they need foreign labor. So we are no different here as we're growing and building up steam here, that we need access to foreign labor, while the Department of Labor in both territories continue the great work to establish a stronger local workforce. So we need to support them just as much as what I'm about to share. So the concept is pretty simple, but it requires our joint effort. In 2029, as we all know, the exemptions that we currently have, first, the exemption from the national cap for H-2B workers and H-1, I believe, are going to expire in 2029. Our CW program in the CNMI will also expire in 2029. So we have very little time and we have to act now. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to recap, just a few areas that I would like to just keep at the top of our mind as we discuss this. So the CW program ends in 2029. We have a cap, or we started with a cap of 13,000 in 2019, and it goes down annually by 1,000. So next year we'll have 9,000 and down to 5,000 by 2029, and then it ends to 0. It prohibits construction workers, which is affecting our ability to handle a lot of federal funds that are going towards infrastructure and disaster-related construction activity. CW workers, unlike H-2 workers, may have multiple employers, so we have an advantage there. They may work at different job sites as well. Currently, we have about 5,500 estimated CW1 workers. And note that our economy is probably at 50% full right now. And so we could easily, if we went back up to the tourism arrivals pre-pandemic, we could easily possibly need up to 10,000 workers. And that's just to get to pre-pandemic levels. If we want to grow our industries or attract new investments, we think we're going to need a lot more. Okay, next slide, please. Meanwhile, in Guam, as you know, The temporary needs exemptions expires for H2 workers in Guam and the CNMI in 2029. Our exemption from the national cab will also expire in 2029. The H2B workers, as you know, is limited to one project and one employer at a time, right? Per the PDN News, you currently have about 5,500 H2B workers, and this is growing fast. And the biggest, I think, setback to the build-up, as I read, is that not enough construction workers. And there's not enough workers to build the barracks for those construction workers. And so your military build-up may be a little bit delayed because of the inability to have as many workers as you need. But I think similar to the CNMI, you know, with all the great programs that your Department of Labor and the CNMI Department of Labor, you still are not going to have enough workers to meet the demand of this economic boom that is about to happen in Guam and is already happening. And so just as the CNMI, Guam will also need a visa program that makes sense. Next slide. Next slide. So the first step is to, I think, develop a what we're calling a Mariana's visa, a visa that would be specific and tailored to the CNMI and Guam to address our unique circumstances. We should not be part, just with many federal policies, we should not be part of a visa system that may work in California and is good for California, but does not work and make sense here in our Marianas. And we repealed the CW1 program before it expires and enact our own Marianas visa. Next slide. Okay. The concept also involves allocating by territory. So suppose we need 20,000. I just put, for example, here 30,000 visas. And again, just for example, 15,000 will be allocated towards the CNMI and 15,000 for Guam. But if the studies show that you need more and we need less, that's something that we can address periodically, okay? But the cap would be allocated by territory, so we don't compete against each other. Next slide. Okay. The other sorry, that was my 5-minute marker. The other thing that we have in the CW worker program is we have a $210 fee per worker that, as Secretary Staffler mentioned earlier, funds our apprenticeship program, which is critical to growing our local labor workforce. If we had this Mariana's Visa program, I would advocate that we have a training fee, and maybe it should be more than $210, but a training fee that makes sense, that can help sustain apprenticeship programs and training programs for our local workforce. Next slide. Okay, and I think what's very important, unlike the other visa program, is that we should have a joint, not also joint development, but joint local and federal administration of the program. They should fund, authorize, and even deputize our own Department of Labor staff to enforce our program, because this will be our own program, and we got to keep it, or else it'll be subject or threatened to be taken away from us. And so right now, the CW program, we lack enforcement. The CNMI lacks enforcement. There are instances where people abuse the system, and they bring up their complaint to our Department of Labor, but they can't do anything. And even if they report it to USCIS or Homeland Security, we're too far out there. They don't have the resources to begin enforcement. So I think we should be able to have joint administration and enforcement and responsibility for our own visa program. Next slide. Which leads me to another topic, the Marianas Regional Commission. Background, since 1965, there have been 8 federal regional commissions created by U.S. Congress. Only 6 are currently active. The first one was the Appalachian Regional Commission, consisted of 423 counties and 13 states. The newest one is the Great Lakes Authority in 2022. So these federal regional commissions are enacted by Congress, and for many, they fund majority of the expenses of the federal commission. Most of them are led by a co-chair that is appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by the Senate of the United States, and then co-chaired by one governor of the state where the commission oversees. For example, the Appalachian State, it's chaired by one of the governors, and all the governors of each of those states serve on the commission. Okay. So the regional commissions do many things. A lot of them look and address issues, economic issues, but other commissions have been formed to also tackle other issues that maybe are not directly economic related, whether it's crime prevention or housing up in Alaska for the Denali Commission, for example. These commissions create 5-year strategic plans and would guide development in the region and to tackle these issues from a federal perspective. And I think that's one way where we can strengthen our voice as Marianas if we have this type of regional commission. Some regional commissions, again, are appropriated millions of dollars by Congress and grant out funds for the development of different initiatives toward whatever our priority projects are. So they could be also a big granting agency for many of our projects. Next slide. Okay. So again, the key issue is we have limited policy coordination since the start of the CNMI and Guam. We have very limited policy coordination. Oftentimes, we just think of the CNMI issue, or Guam just thinks of the Guam issue, but oftentimes our issues are the same. And I think there is no better time than to have these meetings like the MILA, where we can really talk and be one voice when speaking with the federal government. Obviously, our geographic location and inequitable federal program treatment puts us at a disadvantage. Next slide. So again, as I mentioned, the opportunity is to lobby for a Marianas Regional Commission to focus on the things that matter to us, whether it's transportation, workforce development, military issues, climate risk, and other priority regional concerns. Next slide. Okay. As in other regional commissions, will be co-chaired by a presidential appointee and then led by the governors of the territories. Okay, and expenses again could be fully or partially federally funded. Next slide. So that concludes our 2 concepts that we wanted to share with you. Donklu Nasidu Smasi, and we'll be around for questions, or you can see us tonight at the reception. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero and Mr. Sablon. Up next, we have the Deputy Director from the Guam Department of Labor, Gerard Tovis.
Afade and Tiro, I am representing the Director and the Deputy Director from the Department of Labor. My name is Juan Flores. I'm the coordinator of DOL initiatives. I want to do really briefly a personal shout out to Senator Manglona, who is my classmate from maybe more than 10 years ago from high school. And the reason I bring him up, even though we already greeted each other, is he doesn't probably remember that in his valedictory address from our Father Dueñas graduate, it was him who put in my mind the idea that something could happen between Guam and the Northern Marianas. We could talk about that later. But I just wanted to shout out to Senator. Slides? Maybe that, oh there. Okay, next slide. So the challenges that face us are not, many of them are not different from what's going on in the Northern Marianas. First of all, the decrease in the number of industries on the island has been showing up in our 2022 economic census. Again, skills gap due to what's happening in the workforce. The aging workforce mismatching with newer generations. And I want to be honest that the mentioning of aging workforce is a little sensitive to me, as if we're not contributing to the workforce, but we are. The idea that because our tourism market still depends on Japan, that the downturn and the not continued upturn of the market in Japan is affecting our tourism industry, especially post-pandemic. The hotel industries nationwide are experiencing low employment, and even in my experiences, you now can go to a hotel in New York or other places where they'll ask you if it's okay with you that your rooms are not going to be cleaned every day. And part of that is a labor issue. And that's certainly happening here. Representatives of some of the hotels have told me that they've had to limit the number of rooms they can let out, or they've limited the number of tables in restaurants because of staffing concerns, reduction in staffings. And then the outbound migration, which we are all experiencing. And in some industries, that's an outbound migration of skilled workers. And there's been some concern on Guam of some industries training individuals, making them palatable workers for their industry, only to have them respond to bigger and better opportunities, especially on the mainland. That's everywhere from government workers to people in some of our industries. That we may not be seeing that as much in construction. And construction is a conversation we should all have about how we need to find a way to make construction sexy. And I don't know if we have to bring somebody like Taylor Swift to Guam to convince young men and women to join the construction industry, but if they're looking for good salaries, if they're looking for jobs that are probably not going to end in the near future, and if they're looking for ways to avoid, especially with tough labor, laying blocks and things like that, they can avoid paying gym fees by just being in the construction industry because there's good work there. Next slide, please. So the three major areas where we still are seeing some kind of government level incentivized workforce. One is apprenticeship, and I'm going to get to some numbers in a minute. The second is, in the apprenticeships, is looking at the Guam Registered Apprenticeship Program. This session of the legislature just extended the GRAP to 2029, and it's been a great advantage. We've been encouraging a lot of the industries to take advantage of. When I've met with or spoken with individuals from other entities, GRAP is the envy of some states and some territories because of the fact that the tax credit for the registered apprenticeships is very healthy. And it provides, it's a win-win situation for the companies, because not only are they getting trained workers and they're getting them to be trained by their own individuals, but they're also making sure that they're also making sure that they will be able to earn some money from the tax credit. Did I skip a slide? That's the one I did. Recovery of the tourism. Okay, let me just go back to that, and then I'll go back to apprenticeship. The tourism industry is recovering, even at a pace that's slower than we want. Federal appropriations for military construction, the numbers are billions of dollars, and that everybody knows that. But while it creates a demand for workers for those government projects, federal government projects, it's creating a gap in the number of workers in the private industry. And that's something that we need to address. And then we need to look at how do we find a way to retain workers on the island and to continue to educate them. Those are challenges that we have to pay attention to. And back to the apprenticeship program. In the next slide, I think. Okay. So anyway, the GRAP is very healthy. The GRAP is also is now expanding the number of industries and the type of industries taking advantage of the apprenticeship program. So I'm in conversation right now with a vet clinic that's in desperate need of some employees. And if we can provide the related training instruction, technical instruction, and they have the people to provide on-the-job training, they can take advantage of the GRAP. We are working with child daycare centers right now who are taking advantage of the governor's program to put some young people in daycare centers over the summer to possibly increase their participation in the industry by putting them in apprenticeships at the end of the summer, if we can get that started with those areas. And so apprenticeship seems to be the way in which we could not only bring in new employees, new people serving our industries, it's a way to upscale or upskill employees, current employees in the industries. Next slide. And these are the numbers for GRAP. From 2018 with 229 registered apprenticeships, with a tax credit of $4.7 million to, in fiscal year 2023, looking at 433 registered apprentices at a tax credit of $10.4 million. And we might say that that's a government give out, but it's a government investment. It's a government investment in getting better workers. It's a government investment in making sure our industries are served the way they need to be served. Next slide, please. So for our ETA, the Employment Administration, the partnerships that continue to drive what we're doing with individuals looking for work, but also it's supporting the filling of positions that the industries need. Judiciary of Guam, Office of the Attorney General, GCC is probably our biggest partnership, and working with the mayors and other entities with the National Dislocated Worker Program. That especially became evident after Typhoon Mawar, when we could put folks who are in the position to help with cleanup and to help with immediate repairs in the villages. Next slide, please. And then, as most of you know, the American Jobs Center was initially started federally as a way to address the needs of veterans. And so that's a very big part of what the American Jobs Center does, addressing the needs of those who come into the office who might want some apprentice opportunities. They may need some education and training. They may need some support in finding their jobs and finding some services that will help them continue to be employed. And so the total number of staff-assisted veterans from 21 to 23 were 85 veterans, and that number just continues to increase. Next slide, please. The three areas of potential policy issues that could be addressed. One is the legislation for the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, which is something that almost every state, if not every state, has. And one of the reasons why this is important, as an educator, I believe that every young person and sometimes every not-so-young person has something to contribute to our economy and contribute to our community. And that might include people with disabilities. It definitely includes veterans. It definitely includes those who are underrepresented in some of our industries. And to encourage industries to take advantage of hiring them, those previously incarcerated is another area. We know that recidivism is enhanced when these individuals don't get jobs. If there's a way to say to a business, you could get a tax credit if you put the time and effort into giving these individuals a chance and provide them with the training they need. Secondly is to expand in-school youth employability, and that's one of the things that's going on right now is the CTE programs that GCC runs in the high schools is engaged in a youth apprenticeship program. Our first program this year is in the hospitality industry. So the students are already taking the related training instruction, technical instruction in the schools. They're now getting part-time jobs in the hotels, and therefore they're registered as apprentices. And they will continue that apprenticeship when they graduate from high school until they complete it. That could expand. I've had conversations with the construction department, the culinary department, and the marketing department to see how we can continue that. Many of our young people are already doing part-time jobs. And so if they're already taking courses in the high schools and they have those part-time jobs, it's a perfect recipe for an apprenticeship. And finally, to encourage all the government contract employers to post their job openings in our state employment office. Right now, that program is currently Hire Guam. But that way, our office and other people looking for employees can turn to that agency and be able to support those getting government contracts and try to support their needs for employees. Si Diyos masi.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Up next, can we invite the president for Guam Community College, Dr. Mary O'Connor.
Hafiday Zantiro. So just Masi, thank you for this opportunity to present on behalf of the Guam Community College. If we can start with the slides, please. Okay, next slide. Preparing go back, I'm sorry. Preparing a ready workforce. We talk about resilience, we talk about reskilling, we talk about upskilling. And the reason why we focus on these three areas at the Guam Community College is primarily because students need to be able to adapt. Workers need to be able to adapt to the increasing technological advances that are all before us. Sustainability. Are there enough jobs on Guam? And when we fill those jobs, are they going to be able to continue in that area and be able to build a career in those particular career fields? And then reliability. Oftentimes we hear employers talk about, you can give me the best student, but if the student doesn't show up to work and doesn't have a positive attitude, then that student or that employee doesn't work well for my company. So we need people that are reliable, skilled in their profession, and being able to do the work. Next slide, please. No, I'm sorry. Please go back because we're a slide ahead. The mission of the Guam Community College is a leader in career and technical workforce development, providing the highest quality student education and job training for Micronesia. This is the mission for the Guam Community College. This is what we stand by. This is what we often focus on. And our motto over the years has been students first, mission always. Next slide. I've identified a couple of status and challenges of workforce development. Primarily, these are just two that I highlight: lack of skilled workers here on Guam and competitive salaries. Because oftentimes we bring individuals into employment and somebody offers $1 more, they move left. Somebody offers $1 more, they move right. And sometimes we're competing with amongst ourselves, which is a good thing for the student, but not necessarily sustainable for employers. Next slide, please. We talked a little bit about the pre-apprenticeship boot camps, and basically, during COVID, we anticipated that post-COVID, we were going to have some issues with the workforce. So we held what we called a virtual conference, and we had discussions with employers. Post-COVID, what is your workforce going to look like, and how can we help you build it back? And so we engage with businesses right from the start. All of our boot camps have identified businesses before the students are actually trained. And the reason for that is because the employer helps us develop the curriculum. They help us focus on specific areas that their industry wants us to focus on, and they help us build the program. They also contribute to interviewing the students, because the commitment from the employer is to hire the completers of our boot camps. And so that's been a very successful model for us. And these programs are specifically designed to meet the specific industry and the business employment needs. Next slide. The pre-apprenticeship boot camps focuses on in-classroom settings and also at the GCC various trade shops that we have. We do have certified instructors that we use from industry to support the boot camps. And students acquire skills that are measurable and they can demonstrate on the job for the employer. Next slide. This is a list of some of the pre-apprenticeship boot camps that we have offered since COVID. Everything from construction, ship repair, truck driving, information technology, medical home health aides, certified nurse assistants, diesel mechanics, childcare. We're working on the environmental technician that's ready to roll out, engineering technicians, HVAC, medical code and billing, bus driving, cybersecurity, EMT, security, and most recently, plumbing. Next slide, please. The current industry mans emergency industries and skills management. So basically what's happening here is that there are a lot of military projects that are occurring on Guam right now, but post-construction, a lot of that is going to turn into support services. We do have a significant request for construction workers, ship repair, IT, cybersecurity at the top of our list. And skilled labor in terms of construction and supporting services, technology, this is everything from IT to networking to fiber optics, and then the technical labor force, which are the environmental techs, medical technicians, et cetera. Next slide, please. In terms of the government-leveled incentivized workforce development programs, these are just a couple of suggestions. Continued support for the college programs because we offer the work-ready boot camps. We talked about pre-apprenticeship, and as Dr. Flores mentioned, it is in the high school. And even though he highlighted one particular program where we have youth apprenticeship, all of our high school programs actually contain a work experience component, which is 180 hours in industry. So if you're in automotive, you're in automotive for 180 hours with an automotive company. If you're in IT, we place you as a high school student in an IT company. If you're in culinary, there are pre-apprenticeships that we also work in the culinary areas. The college currently has 13 different programs in the high schools here on Guam, 6 public high schools, and it all depends on the space that is available there. But we have marketing, of course, automotive I mentioned, auto body, we have visual communications, we have health services, we also have visual communications. The biggest one that we have right now is computer science. In that computer science program, a student can graduate from high school with 19 college credits to the community college. That student can then complete their 2-year degree at GCC, and it's a +2 to the University of Guam. What a perfect marriage we just established. High school to community college into the University of Guam. And we're starting to build more of these programs in 2+2s that we have with the University of Guam and other universities that support and are also looking, again, for enrollment. Next slide, please. And again, I said this is the Cliff Note version. Potential policy, consider early college programs. In other words, consider allowing students to complete a college degree while in high school. This is something the community college here is working on. And then the second component is free college initiatives. This is something that we are also working on because we recognize that, well, one, our enrollment is going down, but we don't know the reason why the enrollment's going down. We assume that people are out migrating. We assume that because there are so many jobs on Guam, that students are taking advantage of not 1 job, 2 jobs, sometimes 3 jobs. And they don't have enough time to do or to come to the community college. So if we started to offer a free college initiative, then I can take the financial burden off the student and give them an opportunity to skill or upskill so that they can enter into an industry that can help support their families so that they don't have to leave Guam. And so that's my presentation. I look forward to any questions that you have. Sidus Maasi again for this opportunity to present to you this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Okada. At this time, I open the floor to any of the members if they'd like to make any comments or ask questions to the panel members. And so we'll take about 2 questions or comments from any of the members. I recognize Representative Manny Castro.
I just wanted to commend GCC and Dr. Okada on the work that they continue to do. Being involved in higher ed for the past 12 years, we also monitor what's going on in Guam. And oftentimes, there's a lot of barriers to entry. And at the end of the day, people are looking to improve their livelihood. So what GCC has done here is basically align their programs to that need in mind. Not taking too long with the academic programs. The main advantage of the boot camp is it's accelerated, and at the same time, it's using data to the specific program that the industry needs. One big advantage that Guam has is data, and even the employer demand planning system is available. So you can see, you can forecast what are the growing industries and align your programs accordingly. I know the CNMI is working on that, but these data is readily available. So I just wanted to commend GCC for their visionary leadership in getting a lot of these programs off the ground and continuing to focus on career technical industries. Thank you again, GCC.
Anyone else? I recognize Senator San Nicolas.
Thank you, sir. I think we could help each other out a lot if we can, like, bring us closer together. I think the first topic with transportation was very important. I was just dreaming, you know, about a ferry, you know, where I found out that the longest ferry in the world is about 1,000 miles travel. Here, Saipan's only 120 miles away. And, you know, if we can find a way to bridge a gap and have a ferry that would go from here, you know, with all the cars and goods and everything and go to Saipan. And, you know, I'd travel over there with my car and get off with all the stuff and load up Herman's Bakery and vice versa. You know, and I think if we found a way to bridge that, I think we can solve a lot of our problems, like employment and stuff like that. And it could be a dream that's way off in the future, but I think if, as legislators, as leaders, I think if we found a way to commercially make this possible, I mean, we could solve a lot of our labor issues. There's quite a number of CNMI residents who come over here for employment, and I just met one who was, you know, GPD. She works for GPD, and it's amazing how we can share each other's resources, our human resources, and I think if we can find a way to bridge that gap and allow for commerce to trade that way, I think we could probably solve some of our problems. So maybe this is a perfect opportunity to, you know, plant that seed in our head, and we can work together toward that. And it will be mutually beneficial for us all. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator San Nicolas. We have, since we're still good on time, I think there are 3 more speakers that want to go next, and so I recognize Senator Babalta.
Thank you, Vice President Manglonia. I just wanted to provide some historical context for our Guam colleagues with respect to our covenant and our immigration. When we became a Commonwealth in 1975, some of the provisions of the Commonwealth became effective upon signature. Some became effective in 1976, and still others became effective in 1986. So it took a while for the whole agreement to be put into force and effect. When we became a Commonwealth, we were allowed to control 4 main things: our own minimum wage, our own immigration, our own taxes, and the right to self-government. And over the years, with respect to our minimum wage, CNMI could set its own minimum wage independent of the federal minimum wage. Immigration, CNMI had the authority to manage its own immigration policies, but concerns over labor practices in this CNMI, which I will not get into today, led to the passage of the Consolidated Natural Resources Act in 2008, CRNA for short, or U.S. Public Law 110-229, signed in May 8th of 2008. This act placed limitations on CNMI's control over immigration, particularly regarding the foreign worker program. Basically, the CNRA established stricter federal oversight, and this can be interpreted as an infringement on our right to self-government, but that's a topic for another day. Our solution, though, is through a special provision in our covenant under Article 9, or more commonly known and heard of as Section 902, which is our consultative process between the Commonwealth government and the President of the United States, where they both come to the table. And if we are to truly speak with one voice, I have recommended to Governor Palacios to include Guam as an observer. He has the prerogative to appoint his representatives. But if we are to truly bring our issues as well to the White House, I have recommended to Governor Palacios to include Guam as an observer in our 902 processes. We also at one point, and still do, in fact, we possess the right to control our own taxes and our right to self-government. In the beginning, we had greater autonomy over our right to self-government, and the covenant with the United States enshrined this in our unique agreement with them. And we in the Marianas collectively with Guam must not continue to allow the U.S. Congress, I personally believe, we must not allow them to continue to implement cookie-cutter resolutions or initiatives for the Marianas, because it doesn't work. Our environments are so different from the United States. And we must, through this force and through APIL, collaborate and be united in this front, because we all face the same challenges. For so long, Guam and the CNMI have thought of each other, and this is my personal opinion, as the competition and almost a threat to each other. We now have unique advantages. The CNMI through our Jones Act waiver, and now we are joining forces for the cabotage waiver. We must put our territorial banners down and collectively speak as one voice, truly to the United States Congress and to the President of the United States. And I just wanted to provide that background context with respect to our covenant agreement with the United States and how we can leverage that to include Guam truly as un Marianas, because Guam is a part of the Northern Mariana, or the Mariana Islands, and nothing can change that. Not any unique agreement can change that. And we must move forward with this attitude of Finutsamoro patafan apipit uno zan otro cosa kisinya ta adbansa ilinala I totauta Marianas. Jesus mas.
Thank you, Senator Babauta. I recognize House Floor Leader Probst.
Thank you, Speaker, Vice President. I actually have a question for Mr. Alex Sablon and Joe Guerrero on the Marianas Visa concept, if that's okay. Regarding the concept of the Marianas Visa that you mentioned earlier in your talking points, one of the strong selling points, if you recall, we mentioned previously, was a few months ago with Governor Liu and Lieutenant Governor Josh, was about retaining fees in the Marianas. You mentioned it today a little bit. Could you elaborate just briefly on that? And would those fees go to both the CNMI and Guam? Would they benefit both governments? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Floor Leader. Yeah, that would be the out-of-the-box kind of thinking behind bringing the Marianas Visa into this regional discussion. To the point made by Senator Babauta, I mean, a good conversation at 902 would help. A collaboration with Guam and CNMI to talk about just the concept, the idea of bringing in 30,000 potential visas. There's a need for construction workers. There's a need for workers in general in the CNMI. There's a need to form this Marianas Visa so it works for our islands, to augment, not to supplant, but to augment the needs of workforce for all of our islands. But the general idea would be the governor of Guam currently has the provision that allows her to, he or she allows them to certify the TLC. When there is no U.S. citizen available for that particular vocation, that process runs through the gamut of getting the H-2B visa. We're not reinventing the wheel here by asking for a Marianas Visa. We're actually emulating what Guam currently has with the idea that USCIS, basically the United States government, have for many years formulated visas that make sense for particular jurisdictions. The California example, pickers, that's a particular visa. That's a unique visa for specifically California and other states that need pickers. State of Massachusetts uses an H-2B program for wait staff, specifically for that seasonality, 3 to 4 months on the peninsula where they cannot find workers to run their restaurants when there is a need for this work in the summertime. So these are prime examples. And so we're thinking, we should have one voice on the development of a visa that makes sense for the CNMI, makes sense for Guam, makes sense for the region, and then also take the idea that since the TLC process is somewhat done here, why not bring the USCIS process within the Marianas, bring that office into the region, have it collaborate with a very bolstered process with the Department of Labor already on Guam, collaborating downline with the Department of Labor and the CNMI, and join forces in the effort of bringing those dollars home. When we ran the numbers, potentially we're looking at about $1,200 to $1,300 a visa. That's somewhere in the neighborhood of $42 million that could be brought into the Marianas, that could be utilized for workforce development, apprenticeship, that could be used for real dollars to get our kids a leg up coming out of high school. I even attended a recent presentation for our visioning kind of conference with PSS and the CNMI, and suggested that we should provide a requirement for co-op for all high schoolers to give them some immersion in the idea of workforce. Since we're all working towards getting them to college or getting them into a workforce environment, well, that, at the end of the day, gets them into some form or fashion of a vocation. But if you're not pushing the envelope on getting them to understand what true work ethic is, as we talk about, certain generational issues, then I think we're putting a disservice, I guess, to our patrol community. So, again, I think we could bring those fees home, ask the federal government to allow those dollars to remain in the Marianas, and to distribute those funds as needed between the territories so that we can do true workforce development in the region. Thank you.
If I can just add, my last point on my slide was, I think we really need to develop this ourselves. We should not wait for Washington to give us a visa that they think makes sense. We need to develop it now and tell them what we need. Of course, it's going to be a collaboration. But with regard to the fees, yes. And then even with the fees for H-2B, for example, have nothing to do with what's on the ground here. Those are set by congressional bean counters. But we should do our own counting and figure out how much we need to help our situation here. And so we should set the fees as well, for example. Thank you.
Thank you, Floor Leader Probst. At this time, in the interest of time, we'll break for lunch, and then there's a presentation by the Marianas Visitors Authority at around 1:15, and then after that, we'll entertain more discussions. I know there are a few more members who would like to provide statements, and so we'll break for lunch, and then we'll come back at 1:15. Thank you. Oh, can we get a photo up with all the morning presenters before we break, go out and eat? Thank you.